Hi, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Megan.
Welcome to the Grimdark Diaries.
We're your geek gal pals obsessed with true crime and all things dark and disturbing.
Megan, I have to tell you about a true crime experience that I had this week.
Oh?
Well, I was kind of true crime adjacent. I was going
Should I be concerned?
I mean, I'm here today.
Yes, I'm happy you're here.
Thanks.
Okay.
I was going to get my hair did.
Okay.
And my hairdresser is in kind of a plaza that's connected to an apartment building.
Okay.
And it was the day after we had that huge snowstorm.
Right.
And so I pulled into the little parking lot, and the parking spots are kind of right in front of the plaza. And then I normally walk up this ramp because it's the quickest way to the door. And there was all kinds of caution tape, and there was snow piled everywhere. And I was like, oh, maybe they just put some caution tape up because they didn't salt or because of all the snow, because it wasn't plowed very well. So then, because I'm slightly lazy, I was going to walk through the tape. And then I got closer and I realized it was a crime scene.
Oh my god.
And there was police cars and a forensic unit van.
What?
Yes. So then I took the long way around and I walked up the stairs, and then it turns out somebody was murdered. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. They found a guy dead in the hallway of the apartment building.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That is terrifying.
Yes.
Yikes.
Yeah, my hairdresser locked the door.
I
Bless her
bet.
heart. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you were there after.
Yeah,
the
I'm glad
murder
I
happened.
Didn't walk through the crime scene.
No, that too. Yes, that probably could have been bad for
Yeah.
you. We might not be recording this right now.
No.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah. And we also live in a really small town, so a murder is not a thing that happens.
No, it doesn't.
No.
And I'm actually surprised I didn't hear about it on.
It's because there's no
news.
details. It just said ruled a homicide and police are investigating. And that's all the
wow.
details they released.
That's insanity.
Yeah. Megan, remind everyone what theme you had.
My theme, which I rolled last week for, was plot twist.
I love a plot twist.
And this is a twisted plot, let me tell you right now.
I'm excited.
It was a good story. It was not a good story, but also it is. It depends on how you look at it.
That's the description of every good true crime case.
I think so,
Yeah.
I think so as well. We're going to start this story with a father and his daughter, Warren, then roughly 42 years old, and Sharon Marshall, who at the time was around 15 or 16 years old. In the mid-1980s, in Atlanta, Georgia, Sharon was enrolled at Forest Park High School in Clayton County and was excelling at her schoolwork. She had a lot of friends and was a very beautiful person with a very bright future. Teachers even remember her being a popular teenager who did very well in her classes. She ran for junior class office, and she even won a full scholarship to study aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech, as it was her dream to someday work at NASA.
Oh, no way.
Right? Who doesn't have a dream of working
Yeah.
at NASA? That is definitely one of my dreams that will never come true.
You and I are both very space obsessed.
Very much so.
So I feel
Yes.
that. Get it, girl.
Yep. So, in her later high school years, Sharon would become pregnant, and her dreams of going to university at that time quickly faded away. Initially, she denied the pregnancy as she knew it would cause issues at home. See, her father was a very controlling person, and she knew he would be upset with her. When her stomach kept growing, though, she couldn't hide it any longer and admitted to one of her close friends that she was indeed pregnant. At the time, she was dating a guy whose name was Curtis Florney. Sharon and Curtis tried to run away to Alabama so they could start their family and grow old together. But their plans would be foiled as Sharon's father was quick to find them and brought Sharon back home in Atlanta.
So they just were going to run away and tell nobody?
They were going to run away together, yeah.
And
they were trying to...
She was, what did you say, 15 or 16?
Yes.
Okay, girl, you're not going to get away
No.
for that. That's...
Exactly.
You're
no.
a minor.
Which is likely why she didn't get very far before her father
No.
found her and brought them back.
No.
So in 1986, Warren left town, bringing Sharon with him to move to Arizona. And this is my thought, that he wanted to get her away from Curtis, who he probably thought was a very bad influence on Sharon. Arizona is where Sharon's baby was born. Since Sharon was so young, Warren put the baby up for adoption, and it is said that he was adopted by two wealthy Texas doctors.
Nice.
Yeah, at least the baby had a good home to grow up in.
So you said he put it up for adoption, so I'm assuming she did not fully support that decision?
It didn't say that anywhere,
Yeah.
that I could tell anyway, but because she was so young, I'm guessing she didn't have a say one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, and again, this is all my own opinion.
We're pretty much detectives now, so
yeah. Very true. We are obviously experts at this. Warren would have been the controlling factor in the family, so he would have been the one to make the decision. So I'm assuming Sharon would have just succumbed to that. After the birth and the subsequent adoption of Sharon's baby boy, Warren decided it was best to move them again, this time to Tampa, Florida. There he changed their names. Here they went by Clarence and Tanya Dawn Hughes. While living in Tampa, Warren tried continuing to work as a house painter, but kept complaining of a bad back problem, so he then forced Tanya to get a job as a stripper.
He forced his daughter, who he likes to control, to be a stripper?
It makes absolutely no sense to me either, because as a person who tried to get her away from the men in the last place they lived, Tanya worked at a club called Mons Venus, so she could support both her and her father. She was well liked by all of her coworkers, and it is said that her coworkers all thought her to be kind and friendly. It wouldn't be long before Tanya would again be pregnant by a guy she was dating back when they lived in Arizona, Greg Hicks. She did not tell the father that she was pregnant with his child, but she did decide to keep this baby. So on April 21st, 1988, Michael Gregory Marshall was born. It was said that Tanya was a wonderful mother and dedicated her whole world to Michael. Clarence was not a fan of the child's crying and screaming, but he did have a soft spot for the child. Tanya was old enough to have a child on her own around this time, so he let her keep the baby. Let her.
I know. Yeah, no, that's not how
Not how it works. No, exactly. Tanya's good friend, Cheryl Ann Camesso, 18, whom she worked at Mons Venus with, spent a bit of time at the Hughes place with Tanya, Clarence, and Michael. Clarence and Cheryl even dated for a short time. There was an incident one day. Yes?
She's 18?
You are correct.
How old is he now?
Well, he was 42 when she was 15 or 16, so he's probably about 44 or 45 years old now.
I believe in age gaps in love. Age has no love limit, but like she's just barely legal.
Barely legal, you're right, yes. And I do not agree, nor can I do anything about it, so... Just carry on. There was an incident one day where Cheryl and Clarence started arguing about something, and it escalated into a full-on assault on Cheryl. Cheryl was able to get away, but wasn't just going to stand by and let him get away with that, so she decided to call social services on Tanya and Clarence, saying that they were collecting welfare money, but Tanya was making way more money at the strip club than they were letting on, about $1,500 a week. The welfare benefits went on standby until the investigation had gone through, which, of course, made Clarence even more mad than he was before. A week went by, and Cheryl was saying goodbye to her father to go stay with a friend for a bit. She told him when she left that she would give him a call in the morning. That call never came. Shortly thereafter, the Corvette that she owned was found at the airport abandoned in the parking lot. Soon after that, Cheryl was reported missing.
Did her father report her?
Her father reported her missing, yes.
Okay, wait, is the child with her, or the child is with...
This is Cheryl, so this is
the girlfriend,
Sharon's friend,
yes,
from
the 18-year-old
from the club.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't take long, only a few weeks, before Clarence and Tanya would be on the move again, this time to New Orleans. This time, only Tanya changed her name to Tanya Tadlock. Side note, after moving to New Orleans, the trailer that they had lived in while in Florida was reportedly burned down, and it was suspected to be arson.
That's not very, very suspicious.
Not at all. So I felt that that was an important side note to kind of stick in there, because who knows what happened, but it didn't sound to be a legitimate fire.
And I'm confused, because if investigators find it to be arson, they were just like, oh, it's arson, cool, on to the next one. Like, why didn't
There was almost nothing else about the fire that I could read. It was listed as arson, and that was it. So I don't know, and this is where I get a little bit confused, because he didn't change his name, so I don't know back then how they would have gotten a hold of him, but I'm guessing because it was in a different state, they didn't really have jurisdiction to kind of follow up with that, maybe. Again, speculation, I don't really know. So while living in New Orleans, Clarence and Tanya were married. Yes, That's right, married. See, it was reported at the time, and not to the public, that Tanya was Clarence's stepdaughter. But we'll talk more about that later.
Oh, this is getting juicy already.
I know. And you think that's the plot twist, but it's actually not. It's probably one. Like I said,
a mini one.
It's a bit of a whirlwind, this story. During this stay in New Orleans, Tanya would have another child. This time, a girl named Megan.
Oh. Is this the plot twist? Is this your story?
It's not my story.
Are you about to come out to all of these listeners?
This is how I'm doing it, yes. No, this is not me. And this girl spells her name the same way I do, which is lovely.
Suspicious.
And I didn't even know, when I picked the story, I didn't even know there was a girl named Megan in it. So it was a nice twist for myself.
Sure.
Okay, but no, really. Megan was given up for adoption and was adopted by a couple who did not have children in New Orleans. Moving right along, it was time for another move, of course, this time to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tanya decided to go back into business at a local strip club called Passions to support her now husband and son. In this particular club, her husband Clarence had been banned, but Tanya was, of course, considered kind and friendly to everyone she met. Clarence and another stripper at the club had gotten into an argument about something, and then it was overheard that the stripper said his wife should leave him, and he was heard saying, "If she ever left me, I'd kill the bitch."
Oh, that's a threat right there.
Yes, very much so, which is why he was banned. Tanya was very afraid of Clarence for obvious reasons. He had a temper. Even still, Tanya started dating a man named Kevin Brown while working at the club. Her new boyfriend was trying to help her see that she didn't belong with Clarence, and Tanya very much wanted to leave him, but she was so afraid of him. With the support of her newfound boyfriend, she was actually making the plans to leave Clarence once and for all. On April 25th, 1990, Tanya was walking home to the motel that her, Clarence, and Michael all lived in from the store and was tragically hit by a car. She died in the hospital 5 days after the accident.
Oh my goodness.
While she was in the hospital fighting for her life, Clarence banned visitors from being able to see her, including her friends from the strip club and her new boyfriend, Kevin, who wasn't telling him he was her new boyfriend, to be clear.
Smart.
After a few days, Tanya was actually appearing to get better, and everyone had hope. The night before she passed away, it was noted that her husband was alone in the hospital room with her, and by the next morning, her vitals were falling, and she died of her injuries.
Interesting. Was there any kind of investigation or
There was.
Oh.
But when Clarence was asked where he was during the car accident, all he said was that he had been asleep in the motel. So there was no further investigation after that.
So he had no real alibi.
He did not. And they didn't have any further leads, and they had no evidence, so they couldn't go further with that. A few things came up during Tanya's autopsy. She showed signs of bruising, many old bruises and injuries from the past, as well as many pregnancies. She also had breast and butt implants, which could be due to her job as a stripper. At the end of the autopsy, her death was caused by a severe closed head injury. The doctor who reviewed the file was not sure if her death was, in fact, by a car accident, and then classified her death as homicide.
Interesting.
After Tanya's death, Clarence wasn't very emotional, as you would think one would be after the death of their loved one. Much to his dismay, her friends and co-workers from the Passion nightclub decided to pay for her to have a proper funeral and a headstone.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it was very nice. At her funeral, Clarence showed up, reportedly with bodyguards, which I have a bunch of question marks beside because why? I don't know.
What did he think? The strippers were going to jump him at a funeral?
I feel like maybe he had that impression that nobody liked him, because nobody did like him, but like showing up to your wife's funeral with bodyguards seems a bit out of...
It seems suspicious.
Very suspicious, yes. So he showed up with bodyguards and went through the entire cemetery berating and belittling those that were there, seemingly annoyed that they even decided to give his wife a funeral. Heaven forbid. He had her cremated after her death to take care of things quickly, so I assume he was annoyed because he felt obligated to wait and go to the funeral. The next bit of this story is a bit odd, and we'll learn a bit more about Clarence. After the funeral, he needed some time to grieve and to get some things taken care of, so initially, he called the adoptive parents of Megan and asked them if they wanted Michael. They did appear to be interested in adopting Michael as well, but Clarence never did follow through with the adoption process. Clarence also contacted Greg Higgs, Tanya's boyfriend from Arizona and the father of Michael, to ask him if he wanted to have Michael. Greg had no idea he even had a child and was both happy to have Michael, but also sad that Tanya had passed away. The only issue is Clarence never followed through on that one either. He then asked social services if they would watch Michael for a week. Apparently this is a thing you can do in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which they agreed. I'm assuming you can do that if you're grieving. He played it off like he was a grieving husband and wanted to get some things taken care of, so he asked the social services people if they could watch him for a week, and they agreed. So apparently that's a thing you could do. During the week that social services had Michael, Clarence did that sort of thing that anyone would do if you're a horrible human being, and that was contacting insurance companies to try to claim the $80,000 in life insurance policies he had taken out on Tanya months before her death.
Oh, that is extra suspicious.
Yes, very much so.
Does it say if she knew about these policies?
It didn't say. I'm assuming not. I'm really assuming not. But even if she did, she sounds like she was so submissive to him that it wouldn't have really mattered anyway.
And he probably would sell it like, oh, it's to take care of your son if something were to happen.
100% he probably would have. He was very manipulative. While he was doing this, he messed up. The insurance companies asked him for his social security number, and he gave a couple of the wrong ones based on old names he had gone by. As we know, he changed his name a lot. He done messed up because the number he gave them actually came back as a federal fugitive whose name was actually Franklin Delano Floyd.
Oh.
This was Clarence's real name.
Oh.
Oh, snap. Yes. Yeah, this was one of the twists. This is one of the bigger twists.
Cue record scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Exactly. Getting into the DeLorean for a moment, we're going to throw it back to June 17th, 1943, when Franklin Delano Floyd was born in Georgia, USA. Franklin had 3 sisters and a brother. Sadly, at a very young age, the 4th siblings' father passed away, unsure of what. And very shortly after that, their mother ran off to leave the 4 children alone, and then they were taken and raised in an orphanage in Hapeville, Georgia.
That's sad.
That is sad. Very sad. I can't even imagine just being left alone like that by your parents and then never coming back.
That's a recipe for abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Now, this part is a bit of a whirlwind, as if it hasn't been already. This part is more so.
Oh, God, it's going to escalate more.
It is. It is very much so, yes. Okay, so now this part is a bit of a whirlwind. Trigger warning. There is sexually assaulting children in this part of the story. So if that is not your thing, please turn away now. When Franklin was about 19 years old, he was charged and convicted of abducting and sexually assaulting a 4-year-old girl from Hapeville, Georgia, from a bowling alley. For this crime, he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. A year later, he stole a car and escaped. I don't know how you stole a car.
How do you
out
escape prison and steal a car?
1962. I don't know, because in 1962 apparently things were a little bit different, because apparently you can just steal a car and escape from prison. A day later, he robbed a bank in Macomb, but was captured again soon after. Floyd then served his 10-year sentence in prison and was released on parole in 1972. Once he was out, he was living at a halfway house, and while at a gas station, he tried to abduct a woman. Tried being the operative word here. He was caught, arrested, and put back in jail. However, this time, he was able to make bail. His court date in 1973 came and went, and there was no Floyd to be seen. A federal warrant was then issued for his immediate arrest. Back into the DeLorean we go to the present day, after Tanya's death, and Clarence, aka Franklin, tried to give Michael up for adoption, then to social services. Franklin knew his secret was out and that his real identity had been flagged. He fled Oklahoma for Georgia, but was quickly caught a few months later.
Good.
There he was ordered to serve out his sentence for being a federal fugitive and trying to abduct a woman at the gas station. Back at the social services department, they quickly assessed Michael's condition to be very worrisome. He was nonverbal. He would beat his head on the ground, and numerous other things that were overly concerning for the officials taking care of him. A lovely couple, Ernest and Merle Bean, were chosen to foster Michael and hoped to help him as much as possible with these conditions he had developed. The Beans wanted to adopt Michael, but Franklin was not making this process easy for them. See, Franklin was now claiming that he was Michael's real father.
Couldn't they just do DNA tests to determine that?
And they do later, but not at this point.
And also, isn't he being put in jail right now for being a fugitive? So why should he have a say in this child's welfare?
Yes, and this comes up very close to where I'm at here. Considering how private the family was at home, everyone just believed the claim. Franklin even won a battle to have Michael have mandatory visits with him in prison, even though Michael didn't seem to want to based on his actions. Franklin, of course, vowed to become a better man and turn his life around if he could get out of prison and just get his son back. There was some back and forth with the custody for Michael, and due to that reason, it was ordered that a DNA test to be ordered to prove that Franklin was indeed the father of Michael. Once the test was received, it was revealed that Franklin was not the father. Dun dun dun.
Are you having a Maury Povich moment?
Having a Maury Povich moment. That's right.
Wait. Is it Jerry Springer? Who does not the father?
It's Maury Povich. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
The best is when you get to stay home sick from school and watch that.
Yes, and it was like trashy TV. You knew you weren't allowed to watch, but you did anyway.
Yeah, that and Price is Right would be on in the
That's
afternoon.
right. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Mom.
I always wanted to be one of the girls on Price is Right.
Oh, up on, like, as a model?
Yeah, one of the showgirls.
Yeah.
One of their names was Nikki, too, and I, idolized her.
That's awesome, yeah.
To go along with my circus career.
Great aspirations you have. No booty shakes on the stage, though.
No.
You have to listen to a previous episode if you're listening to this one for the first time to understand that comment. When Franklin was released from prison, it was September 1994. The foster parents for Michael became increasingly worried as they knew Franklin wanted his son back and knew that he was capable of causing harm if he wanted to. On September 12th, 1994, Franklin woke up with a plan in place to get his son back. He went to the school where Michael was going, Indian Meridian Elementary School in Oklahoma, and went straight to see the principal, James Davis. Franklin then showed the principal a gun he was hiding and said that he wanted his son, Michael, to go with him. It was all handled quietly and no one became suspicious of anything going on. They all got into the principal's truck and drove a few miles down the road, which oddly enough was close to where the Beans lived. This is when Franklin ties the principal to a tree and says he would contact someone in 2 hours to help free him from his binds. Franklin and Michael got into James's truck and fled, and this would be the last time Michael was ever seen again.
What?
Yes, unfortunately. A couple of months later, Franklin was picked up in Louisville, Kentucky. Sadly, Michael was not with him. He told a bunch of different stories about where Michael was, ultimately landing on one that said he was with a friend Franklin trusted. When investigators interviewed Franklin's sister, she said that Franklin had told her straight up that he had killed Michael at a motel. Sadly, there's no evidence of this, so unfortunately the only charge that police could lay was for kidnapping, which Franklin was convicted of and sentenced to 52 years in prison.
Oh my goodness. So they never found the body of Michael?
I'm getting
spoilers.
to that part. Yes, I am getting to that part. During Franklin's trial, it was discovered that the principal's truck that Franklin had stolen was abandoned after a month in Texas. Someone then purchased the truck from an auction in Kansas. While the truck was being worked on, the mechanic was underneath the undercarriage of the vehicle when they noticed a manila envelope that was located near the gas tank stuck there with tape. Inside the envelope, there were roughly 97 pictures. Most of the photos were of an underage female who was exposing her private areas, was dressed scantily and posing provocatively. Who was this girl, you ask? None other than his wife/daughter, Tanya Tadlock.
What?
Those weren't the only photos found in this envelope, though. The other pictures found were even more horrific, if you can imagine. But why would you want to? The photos were of a woman. She was bound up and blindfolded. In these photos, she was being tortured, burned, beaten, appeared to be near death. Yet, somehow she was even posed provocatively. After the investigators got their hands on these photos and reviewed them, it was discovered that this other woman was none other than Cheryl Camesso, Tanya's good friend from Mons Venus back in Florida. Conveniently, when these photos were discovered, so also were the remains being discovered in Petersburg, Florida, along I-275. The remains were taken to a coroner's office to be examined, and it was determined that they were indeed Cheryl Comesso's remains and that her cause of death was 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's a bit of a whirlwind, this one. I'm glad it all kind of came out at the same time, though.
Yes.
The investigators finally had enough to charge Franklin Delano Floyd, and he was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Cheryl Comesso and sentenced to die by lethal injection. The timing of this murder was suspiciously only a couple of weeks before the marriage between Franklin and Tanya. Tanya's involvement in the murder is unknown. However, the marriage does sound awfully suspicious because a wife could not be forced to testify against her husband if it was discovered.
That is true.
This is a theory, so unknown why, but that
I mean,
could
that's
be a reason.
valid, especially if he was
Yes.
controlling of her. He could have forced her kind of into it.
Exactly. So that's why they said it's unknown what involvement she actually had, if she knew of the murder or anything like that. But it could have just been Franklin being like careful on the side without her knowing too.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? I wish I could say that this horrific story was over, but there is still more to uncover.
Oh my goodness.
Because where is Michael Hughes? And who was Sharon Marshall / Tanya Hughes / Tadlock? The FBI was involved in this case deeply now, and we're working very hard to find out just those answers. Miraculously, in 2014, there were 2 FBI agents who decided to interview Franklin Floyd one more time, as he wasn't cracking any of the times before. They were very strategic and planned out interviews that would go on for days. They were very patient and pressed just hard enough that Franklin would eventually crack and admit how he came to have Sharon Tanya. Back in our DeLorean we go to 1974. Franklin at the time was going by the name Brandon Cleo Williams. Brandon was at a truck stop diner when he met a woman named Sandra Shipman. You see, Sandra was a prostitute and sadly lost her 3 daughters to the state. Shockingly, Franklin wanted to help and offered to marry her so that she could try to get her children back, who were Suzanne, aged 5, Allison, aged 3, and Amy, aged 2. So there it was, 2 weeks after they met, Sandra and Brandon were married.
Oh.
2 weeks. After the marriage, Sandra was successful in getting her daughters back, and then they decided to travel to Pennsylvania to stay with family for a while. One day, Sandra was arrested for a bounced check. I'm guessing there is more to the story, but there isn't much about it, and was sentenced to a few weeks in jail. After her release, she found that all 3 of her daughters and her husband were all gone. A little while later, she was able to find her 2 youngest, Allison and Amy, at a Baptist children's home, but her oldest daughter, Suzanne Savakis, and her husband were gone. Get in the DeLorean, because it's time to travel back to the present day with the FBI agents questioning Franklin about this information. They were finally getting somewhere in this investigation. They were able to track down the marriage certificate between Brandon and Sandra, and also found Suzanne's birth parents so that they could take a DNA test. The test confirmed it. These 2 were, in fact, Suzanne's, aka Sharon / Tanya's, biological parents. You would think that this is a closure moment for Suzanne's mother, but sadly, when the FBI agent spoke with her, she was completely emotionless about the fact that they had found her and that she was deceased. You see, the child was never reported missing.
What?
That is because Sandra just assumed because her stepfather had taken her, she wasn't technically kidnapped. Excuse me?
I have issue.
Makes absolutely no sense. She was a prostitute, so I'm assuming there were other issues going on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your daughter goes missing, even with the stepfather. I still feel like that would have been...
Yeah, why wouldn't she report that? Especially because she wanted to get her daughters back. She married him after 2 weeks of knowing him so she could get her daughters back.
That's right.
And then one goes missing and she's just like, oh, I guess I got these other 2.
Exactly. But ultimately, I think his whole reason for marrying her was to get to her daughters. Right? Because he had been arrested at 19 for abducting a 4-year-old girl. And yes, exactly.
Wow.
It's really disgusting. Makes your stomach turn kind of grossness.
Yep.
After this disappointing conversation, the FBI agents tracked down Suzanne's real father, Clifford Savakis. Before Brandon stepped into the picture, Clifford and Sandra were briefly married. Clifford was a military man and so was not home very often, but still tried to get home to see Suzanne as often as he could. He and Sandra then divorced, and then when Sandra asked him to sign parental rights over when she remarried, he agreed because he felt it was the best solution for his daughter since he was so rarely ever around. When he found out the news about his daughter and what she endured throughout her life, he was completely devastated, as a parent should be.
Yeah, that would be so sad because he thought it was the right thing to do, and then to find out how horribly wrong that went, he would have so much guilt.
I can't even imagine. He would have survivor's guilt from that. That is an absolutely horrible thing to have to live through. I feel completely awful for him. There was one more thing the FBI needed to get clear from Franklin. What happened to Michael? They spent more days pressing him for information about what happened to Michael until finally one day he cracked. He said that after tying the principal up to the tree, he was hoping to have this happy ending with his son, but his son would have other ideas. He cried and screamed for Mama Bean, who was Merle Bean, the foster mom, and wouldn't stop. So Franklin realized the happy ending he thought he would have was never going to happen, so he shot Michael twice in the back of his head.
What?
This poor 4-year-old boy.
Why wouldn't he just give him back?
That's a great question. If he can't have him, no one can have him, and that is his controlling behavior.
That seems like that's been his mentality with everyone.
Whole life, exactly. So Michael was shot twice in the back of his head to make it real quick. So he wanted to make sure that he died immediately.
How gracious of him.
Right. It was so kind of him to make sure his child, not his child, was murdered immediately, so he didn't feel it. He led the agents to where he buried Michael. However, after an extensive search of the area, there was no sign of Michael. The agents did note that there had been wild hogs known to be in the area, and if that were to be true for back when Michael was shot, then even the bones wouldn't be left behind.
Really?
Really.
The pigs can eat the bones?
Wild hogs? Yes. Wild hogs eat anything and everything, including bones.
They must have a really good digestive system.
I would say either that or they don't care and they just die after they eat them. I have
no
idea. I don't know. I didn't really look it up.
That's really grim, Megan.
Yes, and dark, if you will. Sharon Tanya Suzanne got a new headstone with her real name, Suzanne Marie Savakis, with a proper service to remember her.
Aww.
Those in attendance were Clifford Savakis, Megan, Suzanne's daughter, Greg Higgs, Michael's biological father, Ernest and Merle Bean, as well as friends and coworkers that knew her over her short life on Earth. It was said that a touching moment occurred when Clifford got to meet his granddaughter for the first time, Megan. Megan also announced that she was pregnant and would soon be having a son and would be naming him Michael in honor of the brother she never got to meet.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. It was a very sweet moment that he was able to meet his granddaughter and that she was pregnant with a boy and got to name him Michael.
Yeah.
I know, the whole thing was very sweet. There were pictures of it on the site that I was looking at, so we'll post those on Instagram as well. And it was such a touching moment. Like the picture, you can tell like they finally got to meet and they were very happy. Like it was just true joy that came out of a horrible, horrible situation.
I like that you ended this one on like a touching moment.
Yeah, I needed to. There was way too many plot twists in this one, and there was so many on a negative level that I really wanted to end the story in a positive light, and what positive things, even though the whole thing was pretty much negative, what positive things did actually come out of it. So it's nice that Clifford will be able to see his granddaughter going forward and watch her raise her son and things like that. So the family will still be able to get together, and now they all know her real name and her story and how tragic it is, and be able to remember her for who she was and what she stood for, because she, no matter where she went, she was always known as a wonderful human being, and everybody loved her so much, and that radiated straight from when she was in school all the way through her whole life. So she never changed. She just unfortunately had a very controlling, abusive person above her, and she didn't get away from that. So she tried a couple times. But
did he ever get charges for her murder?
For her murder, no. There was absolutely no evidence about that. I believe that's still a cold case, her murder, because there's no evidence.
Definitely him.
And if there were like cameras back then or anything like that, then they might have been able to see. But like they were all living in a motel, and I guess, I don't know, down the road a bit there was like a convenience store. So maybe if she was still near the convenience store, there might have been, I don't know, I can't remember what year that was. So I don't imagine there would have been cameras up on the side of a convenience store back then.
No.
But there wouldn't have been any way even where she got hit, because where she was hit in the middle of the road, it was not in an area where there would have been any kind of surveillance or anything like that. So, but yeah, that's definitely probably a cold case. They've listed it, well, now, I didn't read that the police listed it as a homicide, but I read that the coroner who did the autopsy didn't believe that it was a car accident, and that he had believed it was a homicide.
Interesting.
Right. So I think that might have been what the doctor put on his report, but whether the police took that or not is a different story. So that I didn't have the information for.
I don't know how he kept all of his different lives straight.
I don't either.
How do you remember all that?
All your names that you chose, like, and they were very close together. Like, the moves that he did were like only a year or less in between each other. So it was,
and he basically started new lives.
New lives every single time. And the same thing with his daughter. How does a child remember that? And that alone would screw a child up in a way where they don't know who they are. They have so many different names. They have so many different personalities. Like, this child was going to school, getting straight A's, and gonna go to university to do the aerospace engineering, to go to NASA. And then she goes to work at a strip club. You know what I mean? Like, it's very confusing to grow up that way and not know who you are and what you're capable of. And like, I'm sure that the controlling part of Warren is the reason why he probably made her feel bad for going off and leaving him with her son. Well, and who knows, she might have taken her son. I don't know. She might have decided, because I have a son now, I can't go to university. Who knows? I assume Warren probably had a part in that, or Franklin, I should say. He was Warren at the time that I was thinking of. But he probably had a part in saying, this is part of, you're a part of this family and you have to take care of us. And because he kept complaining about having a bad back, he couldn't work. And he needed money coming in so they could survive. So I assume he kind of laid the guilt trip on her and tried to get her to do whatever she could do to support them.
Well, that's crazy. He's a bad person.
Yes, very much so, indeed. So he is still in jail, and he had 52 years, so he's in there pretty much for life, because I actually don't know.
Didn't he get lethal? You said he got sentenced to death, didn't
he? Was sentenced to death, but I don't believe that it happened.
No, they usually sit on death row forever.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, we will see how that goes, if it does happen. If it doesn't. He is sentenced to death, but he does not have a death
date of birth yet, if then he's still alive.
Yeah, so I believe he's actually still alive. I don't know where he's being held, but he is still alive. So, that's that. Franklin Delano Floyd.
You went above and beyond your plot twist, because there was like 10 plot twists.
There were a few. Yeah, I was really trying to find a good story with a plot twist, and this one kind of just blew my mind a little bit. So I felt like it was a good story to have for this category.
Well, it is time to do our die roll for next week's theme.
Give her a roll.
It is my turn with my D20. I got a 14. Under the sea. Did I sound like?
Yeah, you totally did. That's Sebastian, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I love it.
No, I want to be the mermaid.
Yeah, but maybe not for a true crime story.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
So my theme is under the sea.
Yeah.
Ooh, this will be good.
I'm excited. It's actually perfect for you because you have like the mermaid hair.
And I wanted to be a mermaid.
You did. Yes,
add that to my list.
True. Yeah.
Of things I wanted to be.
Yes, exactly. You have a long list of things you wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's perfect. This is a perfect one for you.
If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us at The Grimdark Diaries on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as Grimdark Diaries on Twitter, If you want to send us a Gmail, we're at thegrimdarkdiaries@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing and give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you follow, as it would help to get our podcast out there. Join us next week to see what I come up with for Under the Sea. And remember, a friend in the dark beats alone in the light.